Hey everybody, Kevin Shortell here again with the first episode of 2024 for you of the Real Estate Without Renters podcast. And do appreciate you listening, do appreciate you telling a friend. So if you're a part of a meetup group, a real estate investment club, any investment club in general, I appreciate you sharing the podcast and plan on ramping it up again this year. I'm off to a late start, I'll admit that, but I do appreciate you listening and subscribing. And the reason for the late start, just caught up through the holidays, had a lot of transactions going. The real estate note industry inventory levels have been extremely strong, extremely steady, and I expect that to continue on. But we're going to be putting together more and more of these podcasts for you. So if you know somebody who you might think is good to be on the podcast, shoot me an email. Let me know. You can find my email in the links below. Also, if you yourself might be a good guest on the show, please let me know for that. And for those who are listening but not subscribed yet, please go ahead and hit subscribe. And if you're so inclined to rate me, if you like the show, please rate me a nice star on there, 5 stars, and I appreciate that. And we'll do our best to bring you more of these informative podcasts for you in the future here. So a couple of things before I introduce you to my guest. I'm talking about inventory levels. As I mentioned, they've been strong, they've been steady. What I'm still seeing overall is we're looking at about 70% performing assets versus 30% non-performing assets, which is an interesting mix. And I think the signs are showing that that is going to start to change. For example, yesterday, about 300 and some odd notes, not all non-performing, came across my desk, but that's just a small amount in a big industry. But I've said this for a long time. I never was one of those people in our industry that said we're going to see this huge tsunami of non-performing loans. Never expected that because of the inventory levels, or excuse me, because of the escrow levels of real estate today. So I just didn't see that happening. I figured it would be a trickle when and if it hits. And the things I've always said is you need to look at the indicators. And when somebody's in trouble financially, think about it logically. First thing they're going to stop paying is credit card debts normally, right? Those go by the wayside. And then they start thinking about, wow, we got to reprioritize our debt here. I want to keep a roof over our head. So they stop making car payments. So those are 2 key indicators that I always look at to see what might be happening in that, because the next thing to fall is going to be the mortgage payments. That's where we're going to start to see a lot more of these non-performing loans. So right now we are at historical highs on credit card debt and also auto debt. And you can look that up in Routers. They just came out with new articles on that. But more importantly, we're also at decade highs for credit card and car loan delinquencies. So not only are the amounts going up, but the delinquency rates are also going up. And that's an indicator that things are not as rosy in the economy as some of our experts are telling us. And the next logical thing is for people to fall behind on their mortgage payments. Now, the good news for us in this industry is we have, as I said, strong, steady inventory right now. If the economy gets worse and if we see more people go into default, for us, that is an increase in inventory. And you know what? It's also a godsend, really, overall, for people who are in delinquencies to deal with us rather than dealing with Wall Street or rather than dealing with banks. Because banks and Wall Street have different motivators, and that is to clean this out, get it off my books, get the property back, sell it, go through foreclosure, those sorts of things. And with us, when we buy these notes, these non-performing assets, we work with people more. And we have the opportunity to help people stay in their homes. And that, I think, is what you're going to see, because different than the last crash that we had, where people owed a lot more, substantially more than what their house was worth, today we see houses with a lot of equity. And because of that equity, there's a motivator for us to work with them more to keep them in their home. So even if things go worse, for us, it'll be more opportunities, but also in helping people stay in their homes, which is a nice aspect of this business. Yes, we're in it for profit. We're not nonprofit entities, but to be able to buy these notes at a good discount and be able to work with people and give them another chance, which a lot of banks wouldn't do, then then that's, I think, overall a great thing. Most of these notes, by the way, are not owned by banks. That's really a misrepresentation. The banks become the servicing companies because banks originate loans and then they sell that paper to Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and Ginnie Mae. And those are the entities that would be pushing towards foreclosure. And you know what? They don't foreclose as much as you think. If you look at the foreclosure rates right now, the Mortgage Monitor from Black Knight Financial February is out, and their report is showing that the delinquency rate nationally right now for first lien mortgages is 3.57%. That's it. That's all. And it's starting to tick up. But what happens is these entities that I mentioned, the quasi-government entities, part private, part public, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and Ginnie Mae, they have a tendency to not foreclose. And what they do instead is they bundle up the bad paper and they sell it. And that becomes our note inventory that trickles down. So again, good inventory levels right now. Nobody wants the economy to go down the tubes, but if it does, if you're investing in this area, are in a great position to not only profit from it, but also for those who like the social aspect of this business where we can help people is a great thing. So a little bit of an update for you there, but I want to get to our guest because I'm always intrigued of the people that are attracted to this industry. This industry, although it is huge financially, it has a small imprint, meaning it's more of a niche industry. Everybody's familiar with real estate and real estate investing and renting and all these other things, but they rarely find out about the notes. And when they do, some people really latch onto it. I see a lot of engineers. I see a lot of tech people that are attracted to this. I see a lot of real estate frustrated real estate investors and landlords that are attracted to this industry. So I'm always inquisitive as to why people are intrigued with this business, how they heard about it. And I think our guest, Scott, is a great example of that. So Scott Brown, who's my guest here today, I wanted to introduce to you. He comes from a very high-tech field and deals in all kinds of aspects with the metaverse. I'm probably saying that the wrong way, but he'll correct me on that. Dealing in social media, all these aspects that are so important today that I really have a deficit in my knowledge base. But he's been with me a short period of time now, very interested in the business and structuring a business plan around this from the get-go that I find pretty intriguing as well. So welcome, Scott, to the program.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. And, I do have a background in real estate, and it's very similar to what you had doing bridge loans and hard money lending. You and I have that in common. And I did that actually before the Obama administration kind of shut down Lehman Brothers and some of these liar loans out there. And we did really well with gentrifying properties and loaning and working with investment groups that I had somebody on the ground, and I was actually living in Florida at the time. And I had somebody on the ground in Decatur, and there was a lot of properties that was bank-owned properties that we would buy, and then we'd bring somebody in and gentrify the property for the investor, get the investor on the paperwork, and they were paying us, I don't know, 15% for short-term bridge loans, and then they were pulling back into a relationship that I had with Bank of America out of Atlanta. Things were running great, fantastic, right? And then all of a sudden, boom, that 2008, 9,
Yeah.
it hit. And we actually did so great. We were living high life, having a good time. I was driving up, flying up Atlanta, looking at property, having a good time, working with a woman, Susan. I forgot her last name. It's been so many years, but she brought me some really good properties. And the main investment group was actually out of Los Angeles. They were doing some things first in Las Vegas because there was a big push back then for people leaving California to Nevada and buying property there, investors. So these investors were then putting Section 8 people in these properties, and that was that. And then everything fell apart because Todd Shoemaker, who my contact was at Bank of America, had to tell me, they're not gonna, I can't move them. I said, what are you talking about? You already pre-approved them. That was before, this is now. So we had, what saved us was the term deed in lieu of foreclosure.
Yeah.
So we ended up actually getting the deeds instead of foreclosing, and these investors were happy to just walk. So instead of being a bridge lender, I became a landlord, and that is something I didn't want to do. I had to hire a management company because I was living in Florida in Tampa Bay, and if you're going to be a landlord, you got to be in the area where you actually have your property. It just doesn't make any sense. And then I had a management company that was stealing from me. It was just a mess. I ended up having, I don't know, 10 properties at the time. I had a couple of properties because of Katrina and what happened in Mobile, Alabama. Bought some properties there. I got some good deals on that. But the thing that really killed me was Decatur. I had 8 properties, and I didn't like Section 8. They skip out in the middle of the night. It was just bad. And we ended up losing some money on there. I mean, fortunately, the years before that, we made quite a bit of money. So it's probably ended up a wash, but it almost it almost drove me crazy dealing as a renter. And I was actually introduced to you, Kevin, through a mutual friend, and I've always thought it was intriguing to get back in. I kind of just like this market. I don't even own my primary home anymore. I live in California. In Northern California, it's very expensive. I live in an area 50 miles north of San Francisco called Santa Rosa, right in
Mhm.
Sonoma County.
Yeah.
Very expensive. So I don't even own. Why own? What I want to do is own notes. It's very intriguing for me because I don't want renters. That's perfect for what I want to do and the investments that I want to make. And the return on those investments are pretty amazing that, for this day and time to be able to actually do that. And if it's done right with the numbers and doing the due diligence on the background, like you taught me, I mean, this is basically our time that we normally get together. We've been getting together once a week since the beginning
Right.
of January. So it's been great getting your brain, picking your brain. And, as a marketer, I've actually been using LinkedIn to set the stage for what I really ultimately want to do is put together an investment group for this, and then pretty much put these deals together and do my favorite thing, which is OPM, and use other people's money to
Mhm.
make money. But I'm going to put my own money, like we talked about in my strategy, through that business plan you were talking about.
Right.
Um,
So starting
Putting
with
money
the,
in.
sorry, so starting with a real estate background is helpful for sure. I mean, especially you were originating loans, and for my audience, the bulk of what we do now, I help people originate loans as well because that's a note business also. But most people don't think of that as a note business; they think of that as the lending business, which is really a subcategory of the notes. But for the most part, in the note investing industry, we're going back and looking at a note that somebody else has already created. So the fact that
Right.
you have knowledge base on how to create a note and do it the right way is certainly a transferable skill set. Now, for those listening who aren't in the business just yet or new to the business, you don't have to have a background in that because basically you'll learn how to go back and dissect that deal and figure out, did they create it the right way? And if so, what it's worth. It's very similar to looking at real estate in that manner, where you're looking at a
Right.
property and going, well, yeah, that's what these properties are worth, but this one needs work on it. This one wasn't done quite properly, or it has some issues with it, and you have to be able to come out to a evaluation on that. The landlording aspect is always interesting too, because as a landlord, there's a lot of money to be made in that, but it does come with a price. And I'll tell you, with your story, you came out pretty unscathed. I mean, just feeling like it was a hassle and a burden and stressed out, but
You should have
you came
seen
out
how
pretty
mentally.
unscathed because there was a lot
Uh,
of people who actually owned the property. You were lucky in the fact that you owned the debt on the property and were able to get the property back, where a lot of people who owned real estate just got blown away because they just owed so much money on that. So it's an interesting cycle. And I like the fact that you've got a marketing skill that is extremely useful in today's world, of course, for all the technology, and to put these deals together. So in that kind of a background, um, I've got a lot of people started with the groups and those sorts of things. So your idea is setting up groups online and having people join that group, listen, and how does that ultimately work for you?
well, what I'm thinking of, well, first of all, is I got to get, even though I have the background,
Yeah.
what I'm looking at and you and I talked about this, is performing first.
Mhm.
Getting performing notes, and that's the lower hanging fruit and the easier one to get into, where you don't change the servicer that actually then contacts the end user of the mortgage and says, hey, you got a new bank. And so I'm the new bank, and I just take over as the bank for the remainder of the term of the loan, which is great. And that'll give me an opportunity to learn all that and do the research and run the numbers. You know, you're big on our weekly meetings with pulling out your calculator that's bigger than my head and running running your numbers, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about the numbers, and then it's about what's the background, what's the reason that they're upside down, or that, you know, when the performing, it's not going to be a problem, but on the non-performing, that's a different story. But
Mhm.
still understanding if it's a divorce, if it's a bankruptcy, what is it in the public records. So when I get to the point after getting a couple of and plus I'm looking for cash flow. I
Yeah.
want cash flow, and I want a long-term cash flow, monthly cash flow, which gives me a better return, obviously, than a CD or any other annuity vehicle or whatever the other vehicles would be. So I'm looking at performing first, and I'm probably going to do like a couple of a quarter. And then my long-term goal is to help people with, well, the next step, I guess, would be non-performing, which takes more research and there's more risk, but the reward is going to be better. And at that point, I'll probably hire in a virtual assistant to actually do the public records research for me while I'm sleeping. They'll be in the Philippines or somewhere, and then the next morning I get a report that says what I want to see. You know, what's going
Right.
on. You know, the things that I'm going to learn from you that say to me, hey, you know what? Don't touch that one. It's a divorce. Don't
Yeah.
touch this because it's this or that. So even though the numbers make sense, sometimes the reality of the situation makes no sense at all to take it on.
Yeah,
And then as far as
that's
the
where I
long
talk
term,
about that's where I talk about you know, this business is all, so the skills that you learned on the lending and the landlording, involuntary landlording that you had, it's still different when you get into the note side, right? I think that's what you're expressing there, is there's still some things
yeah,
that you really have to learn, and you know, those are great to have, but
yep,
as long as you don't come in as, not that you are, but to the audience, I've had real estate investors who are extremely sharp, very good at real estate investing, come in and just think that they know everything about the note side because they've been to closings. That it's like, no,
yeah,
you have to go back and reprogram a few things here and take it from
exactly,
the debtor side and really look at it from that aspect. And part of what I like to teach is the very foundational skills of this business. And you know, what I've found is a lot of real estate investors lack those fundamental skills of,
right,
you know, what these documents really mean. They've signed a
sure,
bunch of them. You know, I used
sure,
to make the joke in trainings all the time. It's like, you know, I'm sure you all have been to a real estate closing, right? Of course, yeah. Everybody in the room, you know, raises their hands. Like, and I'm sure you read every single document that you were signing at the closing, right? It's like, you know, no, you didn't read anything. I said, in the note
no,
business, that's what you're buying. You know, you've got to be able to look at that. So it makes sense to start out and not complicate things
right.
by having a distressed buyer, distressed borrower in there, and by performing notes. So that's a great path
Yeah.
to be on there. So get a
Well, you
couple of those.
recommended that through
Yeah,
your mentorship training. You know, that's what you recommend. You recommend, because I asked you, and you
yeah,
said, yeah, do the performing first. Basically, cut your teeth on it. And you know, you're right about the whole thing with the real estate foundation. I look at it, but what we're building here is the walls are different than what I was building before. The elements are different than what I was building before. So I've come to this with you as the mentor to help me out. I pretty much have a blank slate. I'm
right.
coming here, as they say, tabla rasa, blank slate, and I'm gonna be a sponge and absorb everything because I'm investing in this. I'm investing in you to teach me how to do this, and the ongoing is great. And so far, it's been, you know, it's been great, Kevin. I mean, I appreciate everything that you're doing. Dwayne's been excellent helping you out, and I'm really excited about doing this and
Yeah.
getting
You'll find that
performing.
systematic approach, by the way, and I think you're already seeing that the times that we've been able to meet on Zoom and review some things. So I think the hiring of assistant is a fine way, virtual assistant. Once you show them I want you to take this information, put it here, run through those calculations, and that way you can just look and go, yes, 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 no, and just by looking at the numbers. I think that's a great way to automate the business.
Yeah, I'm just going to have them do the raw numbers probably, and then do the public record background checks, things like that. So they're not going to do my due diligence. They're going to
There you
give me
go.
the data. They're giving me the data. I'm
There
the
you
guy
go.
who analyzes. I'm
There
not
you
going to
go.
let anybody analyze my money.
Yeah,
Right?
it's
Maybe
numbers
you.
and story, numbers and story.
Maybe I'll let you, Kevin, analyze my money. But I'm not going to let somebody in the Philippines do that who doesn't even understand the market here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't mind doing that. But my long-term goal, and you're asking me about that too, is to put together an investment group for people that are interested in another alternative investment. And I think you're right about the different people that would be interested. People that have investment. Yeah, I mean, real estate investors now would probably be fairly good, but like you mentioned, engineers, people that have additional money that want to do something, that don't want to have a CD, they don't know what to do. They have all these insurance companies saying, get this annuity, blah, blah, blah. And, some of the, put it in your 401k, and you can actually fund some of this, right? With a 401k money, or K1 or IRA money.
IRAs, yeah, any of
So
that.
it doesn't matter. It could be a
Any
traditional
self-directed
or
account.
Roth.
Yeah.
So anything Roth or a traditional would be
Mhm.
fine. So I mean, that's something. So what I'm looking for, and I'm already actually thinking about it, I'm going to create a website, because I always do that, and attract people to it. That would be my perfect investor. I can actually paint a picture of the perfect investor in words and put it out there in Google land and get what I want. And I'm already setting the stage for that. I've got a couple of people that are interesting, and some people that are interested here in the Bay Area where I live in San Francisco. There's a group of investors that are actually using insurance vehicles. So, I mentioned the annuities and some other things, but this is a great alternative. And again, I do know somebody who actually has rental property in San Diego. Her son happens to be the guy who is on A&E Flip San Diego, and I learned a lot from him. But she has property, and she, what she does, she carries a gun with her to collect rent. Crazy. I mean, she has to do that because she buys distressed property in bad areas of San Diego, California. Believe it or not, there's bad areas in San Diego, right?
Wow.
But anyway, so it's interesting. I don't want to do that. I don't want to get into that. I don't even want to. And I like the aspect too of helping somebody. I'm really big on profit things and giving back. And if I can actually turn somebody around that just had, a little bit of bad luck, they got a little behind on their loans and the bank's not being forgiving, I'll consider, continuing or restructuring their loan, and getting them caught up, right? And, build that in and make it comfortable for them. I mean, a lot of these loans, compared to what I'm used to in California, $500 million loans, a lot of these, I mean, what can you start out with, Kevin? I mean, what are some of the lower price cost loans that are out there that you see?
Oh yeah, in the Midwest, I mean, we see a ton of notes right now under $30,000, and it makes sense. Let's say at 100,000, you're better off really buying three of those smaller notes, less risk, higher returns, diversification, versus buying a big note on one property. And
there's no way I'm going to buy any notes in California or even anywhere in the West. Maybe, parts of Nevada possibly, but you're talking maybe Wyoming. I don't, it doesn't matter where the note is. That's the beauty of this. When you actually have
where the
property,
deals are.
rental property, you've got to be near your rental property. This is all deal based, like you have, and it's being serviced. You've got everything from A to Z. The beauty of working with you as the mentor, A to Z. I actually have a cheat sheet, and I have links to everything that I would need. And when I put together an investment group, I'm not going to train them, by the way. You're the one who's going to train them. I'm going to have them go to I'm not going to work with anybody unless they go through the Kevin Shortell training program, period.
Yeah.
So it'll be good for you.
Go ahead. Yeah, there's a trend there, I'll tell you, because a couple of things. just to go back and clarify real quickly, when Scott was saying, he'll work with people to do this, it's all outsourced, so don't be thinking that you're going to have to be calling delinquent borrowers and trying to work with them. You're going to outsource that. You just have to direct the people to go out and reach out what your plan is on that. But I'll tell you, there is a frustration in the industry right now that you just hit the nail on the head of, is you've got these companies that are in the business of buying notes and selling notes. And it's one of the inventory funnels that I talk about. And their frustration point is somebody saying they're going to pay X number of dollars for a particular note, and then dragging that out and then backing out of the deal and not closing on it. And that's driving some of these companies just absolutely crazy, as it would. I mean, imagine you have a house and you're trying to sell your house and you take it off the marketplace and now it's tied up for several months, and then the people back out of the deal. I mean, we see that in real estate all the time, and lawsuits are a result of that. Now, in the note business, you're not going to get sued if you don't go through on a note, but it does cause frustration to the point where a lot of these companies are saying, hey, you've got to have a mentor. You've got to have somebody that's working with you on this and
But
copy
there's always
on the email.
there's always that piece, and that piece is contingency.
Mhm.
Talk about this deal is going to happen, but if there's a contingency that
Sure.
can close that deal down, you always want to have a contract with a contingency that
Right.
could actually out. If you don't have a contingency, sometimes you do get stuck and you end up having to buy that note or property, whatever the case may be. That's why real estate falls through. That's why people get multiple offers on property what they're selling, because maybe somebody can't come to the table. They do a cash deal and they can't come up with cash, or they're trying to sell their property and they can't sell their property, so they can't close on the property. But there's, there's still some contingencies in notes. I've only been doing this for a month and a half, but I think we talked a little bit about contingencies. You've talked about that in meetings. You want to?
Oh yeah, I use one
that?
clause that I've used for 20 plus years in this business, and I always have that in every offer that I do, and it just gives you the legal, moral, and ethical out.
Right.
Should a deal not be what it was supposed to be or expected to be? Because as you're learning, sometimes in this industry, you do have to make an offer before you have all the facts. And certainly when you're in a case like that, you want to make sure that you make the offer, but it's contingent or subject to certain items, and
Well, and there's the
got to be
hot
done.
market too. If you're in a hot market and you're actually in a bidding situation, so that's when you make mistakes.
Mhm.
You got to get those contingencies. I've seen that happen with other people that I know that get caught with a property that's like, after they close on the property, they think, why did I do that? What was I thinking? I didn't do my due diligence. I didn't have a contingency, and I've got this dog of a property. What am I doing? So, got to be careful, even in a hot market. I mean, what is that saying? When there's fear and you don't have fear, but when you have fear, I can't remember the saying, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You act when other people are fearful, and then you stop acting when everybody else is in a hurry.
Yeah, it goes
That
along,
kind of
I
thing.
guess, with Warren Buffett's buy when people are selling or fearful, and sell when people are confident, something like that. Looks like he might have froze up there, so we'll get him back on in just a second here. So I'm talking with Scott Brown. Interesting background, again, starting in real estate and then in the marketing aspect. And a lot of people who enter this business and start to look at it really as a full-time and growth, which is what you're doing, you do have to think about other people's money. And I didn't mean to derail you on the direction you were going there, so we'll get back to that. So with other people's money, it's an important aspect of this business, because at some point in time, you deploy all your capital, and then what? You either start doing partials, you start partnering with people, or you take it next level, which, partnership is part of other people's money, but then you also get to other aspects. And some people look at building funds and everything else. So a great way today to do that is through the social medias, I guess. And that's the direction you're ultimately long-term going.
Yeah. I'm still back at, I want to meet the people. I want to know the people, and I'm going to have exclusive groups and limit it to the number of people that I have. I'm not going to mass produce this. I don't need to. And in this industry, I don't think you really do need to. If you're getting cash flow and multiple streams of cash flow, and managing that and helping other people and then getting cash flow on a percentage of whatever they're managing. And then they bring a friend in, and then they bring a friend in, and then they bring a friend in. I don't have to I don't have to do mass media on this at all. If I actually pony up with the right people. So
Yeah. And,
that's
that
the
works,
key
on
the
the
whole
other
thing.
side as well. For example, this morning on a one-on-one session with another client, there's a lot of times when you start to look at these deals and you go, I'll point out to you and say, you know what? The person who created this note, this is what they do. They buy real estate and they sell the real estate with financing, and then they move on to the next one and the next one. And you start to build a relationship with that one client. The next thing you know, you're buying 6, 7 deals from that one person. So
Exactly.
it can be a complete game changer. The guy this morning I was talking with, I think he's bought 7 notes from the same seller. And it just
Right.
becomes easier on there. So when you got deals coming in on that relationship level, and then you've got the relationship level on the other side where they tell their friend
Right.
and they tell their friend. I mean, that's just a winning mix. So I would have to agree with you. It doesn't take, you don't need hundreds of people to be on there. That's a great point.
Exactly. And it all comes down to credibility too. I mean, by you being in this industry for 20 plus years, you're probably pushing 30, but we're not going to tell everybody
30
it's
plus,
almost
yeah.
30 years.
No, I always remember because I was either
We
just
don't want.
married, or about to get married, and that's 32 years. So I track it by my marriage. Yeah.
I mean, this is not my career. This is my investment. Okay, I
Right.
have career, I have investment. Believe it or not, I'm 61 years old, and I'm thinking of another 6 years. So what do I do after that? If I'm actually living in another country or whatever, I can still make money on this note investment,
Yeah.
especially if I'm doing a non-performing and restructure that loan for 15 years. That's 15 years. My kids will get the money. I'll have to I'll have to leave them the cash flow to my kids or
Right.
somebody else. I'm not married right now, but
Yeah.
I am seeing somebody. She can have the money on the
Yeah.
cash flow.
Yeah.
I'll say, look, you can have that whopping $200 from that particular client. That the servicer on that is $20 or $30, like 10% of whatever the income is, a monthly income from the mortgage. So
Yeah.
um, that kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely though, Kevin. I mean, what you're doing is amazing because you're not taking any piece of it. You're just doing the training, and you're basically helping guys like me to find a better investment vehicle than I can find at Fidelity. I can't. Can I say Fidelity and all these? Okay,
Yeah,
at
sure.
an investment. If I had a broker, or I still do. I have 401ks and all that stuff, but I have a broker. I've got Fidelity. I have others, AGA, whatever. They're
Sure.
not performing. They perform under. They perform even at this time about 5 to 7%. I can't give numbers here, right, Kevin? But we're talking about double digit, at least small, lower double digit returns if I do it right. Correct?
Yeah, average returns 10 to 12%. I mean, just buying, that's without doing any kind of exit strategy, partialing or partnering or anything like that. That's just buying a
Yeah.
performing note. And the great thing about it too is the risk. I mean,
Yes.
you've got a property, I've had people go, well, what happens if property values drop by 10, 20%? I said, not a single client of mine would be in trouble if property values drop by 10,
Yeah, the property
20%.
value doesn't matter. And even if you do a non-performing and you do a deed in lieu foreclosure on it, you get the asset back, like you were talking about. I learned that obviously in my previous
Mhm.
life. You get the asset back, and then you just sit on that asset, and you rent that asset out until it actually appreciates. It's a cycle. Everybody has to understand you don't get rid of things in a cycle because it's bad. You hang in there. It's an investment. They
Yeah.
call it an investment. It's not a guarantee. It's an investment. It's a risk. It's a reward. You're going to get, and you want to be diversified because, and I have other investments too. I'm actually part of a venture capital group out of Cambridge, things like that, from college days.
Right.
So you got to be diversified, and this is a great way to diversify. You can even diversify in the note diversification and the note diversification. So there's a lot, like you said, don't buy $100,000. I almost said 100 million, $100,000 note when you can buy 3 of them. at
Right.
$33 or 33,000 a piece. If one goes tank, then you're okay. If you got 100,000 one and it goes tank, you're in trouble with 100,000. And you got to be willing to actually use money that you're willing to lose. Don't use your rent money. Don't use this. And that's one of the reasons too. I'm looking at investment group, so I don't have to use my money, and I use my expertise at that point because I've learned from the best. And Kevin, you're the best at the note business.
I appreciate it, but you're right. We always, as you know, always look at risk first, then we look at reward. You know, you got to protect your money, and you know, again, when you can buy a note for 30 grand backed by something worth 100, again, that property could drop to 80 grand. Okay, now you got a $30,000 investment backed by $80,000 property. And the other crazy thing about this is when you think about it, your risk, especially in an appreciating market, your risk goes down every month.
Yeah.
You know, because they're paying
yeah.
you back principal, they're paying you back interest. And if the property value is going up and the amount of money you have in the deal is going down, you know, it's an interesting concept, and you don't have all the same, you know, headaches with the landlording and those aspects there. So
Well,
that's
you know what you really push to, you know, the numbers and the ratios on the numbers, and getting it to the 80% or higher.
Mhm.
You know, working the numbers, the risk numbers, and letting the numbers don't lie. People do, but numbers don't lie. And that's why you have to do a double risk assessment. The numbers first. If the numbers don't make sense, it doesn't matter what anything else is. And the numbers have to make sense before you go to the next step, which is the due diligence on the human factor.
Mhm.
And then you can make a good, solid decision. You still may mess up. It still can go south on you. But again, if you diversify, it goes south on one deal and maybe not another. And if you actually write it correctly, you end up getting the asset back anyway, and just sit on it and then rent it yourself. You hate to kick somebody out of their home after they've been there for a while. You don't want to do that. But if you have to, last resort, you do it, unfortunately. Right, Kevin?
Yeah, exactly. And I've never had to do it. I mean, that's the thing, and I've had to threaten it, you know, and that's sometimes, you know, people need the wake up call, and you give them the wake up call and they communicate. And like I said, options, when you're able to buy these things at such a good price, you've got options that, you know, previous lenders simply didn't have. You know, didn't have. They had too much
Another
money.
thing too that just popped in my mind is, instead of kicking them out of the house, what you do is you own the home and you lease it to them, and maybe you do a lease option for them to buy the house back.
Yeah,
That could be
we're
an option, right?
We're in the
That's a
creative world.
option, right?
We're in the
That's
creative
pretty
world.
creative.
I've made the argument before too with, you know, we run into people that also declare bankruptcy. And for most real
Yeah.
estate investors, bankruptcy, they run the other way. For us, we gravitate towards it because that means
Sure.
something has happened. So, you know, if it's a case where someone has declared Chapter 7 bankruptcy, but all their debt's gone, you know, bankruptcy doesn't mean that person doesn't have any money or any
Right.
income. It just, you know, they could still be making the same $50,000 a year,
They
but
live on a cash,
which was
cash
100 grand is gone.
right?
They could be a good candidate to stay in their
Yeah, I mean, somebody who
in that property.
somebody who has
Yeah.
bad credit, doesn't even matter either. But
Yeah.
somebody who lost a job, right?
Yeah.
One source of income, you know, that's terrible. You got to have multiple streams of income, because if you lose your job, then what do you do? 6
Yeah.
months later, you're still looking. You know, there's something that shit, it actually left my mind that we wanted to actually touch upon. I should have mentioned it. It was something critical that you were talking about in one of the sessions that we had. You know, you're gonna have me come back and do another podcast, because you know I'm gonna do in the middle of the night. I'm gonna
Yeah, I'm gonna wake up and go,
oh my
that's
God,
what
now I remember what I
that's what
wanted
it was.
It
Well,
it was kind of important too.
Yeah, I think part of this is because I've done it so much, I've had enough trial and error where I really have a direct approach to every asset that I look at. And when you build a repeatable process, it becomes really more muscle memory where, you know, it's easy for people to ask for, well, do you have a checklist at this and that? Well, they don't all work on checklist, you know, because sometimes you have to go, well, if yes, no, you know, you have to kind of think about all these different aspects here. So but there is an approach, and you divide your due diligence into layers because you don't want to waste a lot of time in the business. So it starts with that surface level due diligence, and that's the one that you were saying. And we take the
You
calculator
know what?
out.
It just came in my head.
All right, we run three
And
ratios, and then
okay,
go ahead.
here it is. Here's what you've discussed with us. Government assistance, right?
Oh yeah,
That's important because you could have somebody who could qualify to get government assistance. We can help them, and we get the money from the government
yeah,
for their loan,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
You want to explain that a little bit?
That's a huge program and underutilized because most people don't know about it. The same thing happened. This program used to be called Hardest Hit Funds in its initial version. And that's the one that was around after the last crash. It got established in 2009, and it only applied to 13 states and Washington, D.C. This time around, they changed the name of it to Homeowner Financial Assistance, but they broadened it where every state was allocated money. And they left it up to the states as to what that money could be used for and how much, per family and that sort of thing. And there's a handful of states that have already spent that money. And we haven't had a
Right.
crisis really yet, but we've had enough of defaults where some states have already used up all their money. So we're talking 50, $60 million worth of capital that they had. So let's run this scenario down the road. I started off talking about stats and things like that. What if the economy does get worse? What if
Right.
all of a sudden the foreclosure rates start going up, astronomical again, multiple highs? What if that happens? Well, think about it. I don't talk about politics and those sorts of things, but I'll tell you what, there is a political flame in the country today. And I don't
Yep.
care who's in office or whatever. We're in an election year, and if foreclosure rates start to go up, it's logical to go, well, they're going to throw more money at this program, right? Because
Yeah.
no administration, I don't care who you are, wants to have
No.
all these people in foreclosures, right?
Yeah, you don't want
Not good for the
displaced
economy. It's not
Americans.
certainly not good for politics.
No.
So they
We already
will
have a
address
homeless
this issue.
crisis already. You don't
Yeah,
need more people on the streets that lose their homes.
exactly.
So,
So
with the rents going up, and there's several, programs even for rents, and there's really, if you put your head together with somebody who's in quote unquote crisis with their mortgage, there's always a solution, and it's just willing to get it and be able to actually bird dog it. I mean, with the
yeah,
information today, it's not hard to figure out what programs are out there that will give you assistance to help you with your mortgage. And again, guys like you and I will benefit because the government will be paying us, not them.
yeah, all we have to do is contact them. So we've done that typically through a door knocker, cost you 75 bucks. Send a door knocker out there, they hand deliver. Hey, this government program can help you. Now, that government program, they are the ones who have to apply, but they don't know
Right.
about the program. So we inform them about the program, hand delivery. You could also just mail it off. But the point is, you get the information in front of them, they make a phone call or they get on their computer and they fill out the paperwork. 90 days later, there's states that will pay up to $100,000 to catch that person up on their loan. So their loan goes from default to current overnight.
Right.
And then some programs even will pay monthly payments on behalf of that borrower for the next year. And you're right, all that money, it doesn't go to them, it goes to the note holder. So,
Right.
by the way, it doesn't matter what you pay for the note. So you could pay $20,000 for a note and get $50,000 back from the government to bring that person's loan current.
Right, because there's that because there's
Yeah.
the arrears. You got to
Yeah,
cover the
exactly.
arrears.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's, in the states that have already allocated their money, again, I think they're going to get more money. And again, I'm basing that on experience because years ago when it was called Hardest Hit Fund, guess what they did? After 4 years, when the program was supposed to expire by then, they
Yep.
gave another couple $1 billion because it was
Well,
working and
it's an
it was
election
helping
year.
people.
Not to be political, but it's an election year.
Yeah.
And, the House is it's a marginal majority in the House. Who knows what's going to happen in the White House, but as
Yep.
far as the Senate and the House of Representatives, and even in the state capitals, a lot of these funds, these funding you're talking about are run by the states, but
Yeah.
they're federally
Federally
assisted.
funded. Yeah.
I don't want to get into politics, but we are a socialist country in many ways, aren't we? I mean, the government comes to rescue, they'll bail out Chrysler, which is funny because the government had an opportunity to bail out Lehman Brothers and they didn't.
Yeah.
and Lehman Brothers is dead like the dodo bird. But Chrysler, through Lee Iacocca, he went to the government, got money. Chrysler survived. Lehman Brothers didn't.
Yeah. So there'll be more money in these programs or different versions of these programs. So again, it's and that's one of the things I do, of course, as you mentioned, this is not a full-time thing for you, and it's not for a lot of my clients, but it is for me. So I'm the one always reading these reports and getting back to
Sure.
you all and letting you know about where these programs are. So I just think we're in a great industry. We're perfectly suited as we are. Things get
Absolutely.
worse, our opportunities increase, but again, on a positive mission to help people stay in their homes as well. And I think that'll show again for
Yep.
us. It's really just a matter of mastering some skills and it does, I think, today take working with someone like myself that can actually guide you through these steps,
Sure.
because
I couldn't do
you
this
had
by
to feel
myself.
that your learning curve is just going to be so much shorter, number one, right?
Yep.
You've already seen
I,
that.
I mean, I follow you on LinkedIn, so I see your videos. I've got access. I subscribe to your video and all the podcasts you have. You're always on the move. every video you do, you're walking. So you get your exercise in and actually communicate at the same time. But you mentioned at the beginning of this cast about a business plan. I know my end game now. I know where I'm going with this, and I start from my exit strategy and work my way back into my business plan. And again, with this, and especially with non-performing, and if I restructure like 15 years or something like that, I'm 61. It's going to eventually outlive me, and I'll leave a legacy for my kids, whether they like it or not. So, but at least they're not going to be landlords, right? Because what do?
Yeah,
Right,
real
Kevin?
estate
You
without
do
renters, right?
real estate without renters.
There you go.
Yay, right? Who needs a renter?
There you go.
I
So,
am a renter, actually. I
yeah.
rent, which is interesting. I'll buy
Ex-
notes and own property notes, but I
Yeah,
rent.
yeah. Excellent. Well, that's a great way to leave it, and I appreciate it. I really look forward to working with you throughout this plan, because I think you're going to have some great success in doing this. But thanks for coming on and sharing your thoughts with
Sure, anytime.
everybody on the show.
And working with Dwayne's been great. He's kind of like your Ed McMahon or right hand man or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, he's helping me out quite a bit, and
That's good
good to have
stuff.
him
So,
on board. And by the way, I do have a training coming up. If you're interested in an introductory training to the note business, I've got one coming up. Oh, it's going to be pretty close by the time this airs. It's going to be February 21st and 22nd. So I'll put the link in this on YouTube. I'll also have it on the podcast for you, for those who are interested. It's only $49. You'll spend 4 hours over 2 nights, the 21st and 22nd, with me, and I'll really be able to spend enough time to see if this is the right investment for you or not. Look, there's plenty of free trainings out there and videos. I make some myself, but really not enough in the free stuff to know ultimately, is this the right investment for you? You spend 4 hours with me, I guarantee you'll know if this is the right industry for you or not. So be well worth your time and effort to do that. And again, that's February 21st and 22nd. So look for the links on that as well. Thanks again, everybody, for listening to the podcast, and please share it with a friend and go ahead and subscribe. I do appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.